It was just a quiet evening like any other. The house was still, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. I had just finished cleaning up the kitchen, planning to wind down with a book when I heard the faint knock on my door. I turned around and saw her, my stepdaughter, standing there in her pajamas, her eyes unusually thoughtful. Something about her posture, the way she hesitated, made me pause. She wasn't the type to seek late-night conversations, especially not with me. But this night was different. She stepped into the room slowly, holding onto the edges of her sleeves like she was bracing herself. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly, almost like she didn't want the words to fully leave her lips. I nodded, already feeling something stir in my chest. That's when she looked straight at me and asked, "Do you ever think about me when I'm not around?" For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Not because the answer was complicated, but because the question was. It caught me off guard, like she was peeling back a layer I hadn't realized I kept so tightly shut. That one sentence, so simple yet so loaded, hung in the air between us like a delicate thread that could snap at any moment. You see, we're not the typical picture-perfect stepfamily. My relationship with her has always been careful, cordial, polite, but never deeply personal. After I married her mother, I did my best to be present, to show up, to not overstep. But I also kept a little distance, out of respect for the memories she held onto of her real dad. Still, her question made me realize something had been shifting. In the quiet moments, the ones filled with awkward dinners, shared rides, and subtle glances, I had started to care in ways I never really put into words. But did she see that? Did she feel it? Or was I just another adult who passed through her life without truly noticing the details that made her who she is? There was something fragile in her expression, like she had rehearsed the question more than once before finally saying it out loud. And suddenly I wondered what made her ask that now. Was it just curiosity? Or was there something deeper she wasn't saying? Was she feeling unseen or unheard? I looked at her, my mind racing with everything I wanted to say but didn't know how. The silence between us stretched just a second too long. And in that moment I could feel something changing, something real, something important. But before I could answer, her mother's voice called from down the hall, breaking the moment in half. My stepdaughter gave me a small smile, the kind that tries to hide disappointment, and turned to leave. And just like that, she was gone, leaving me with a question still echoing in my heart. So, what do you say when a child who's not yours by blood asks if you think of them when they're not around? What does that really mean? Stick around, because the real story is only just beginning. After she walked out of the room, I just sat there, staring at the doorway. Her words kept playing over and over in my head like a song stuck on repeat. Do you ever think about me when I'm not around? It wasn't just a random question. It felt like something that had been building for a while, something sitting quietly under the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise. I got up and walked over to the window, hoping the night air would help clear my mind. But it didn't. All I could think about was how many times I may have missed the signs. Small looks, half-spoken words, quiet moments that seemed ordinary at the time. I began to wonder if she'd been feeling distant, or maybe forgotten, even while living under the same roof. Our story isn't dramatic, not on the outside. I married her mom 4 years ago. At the time, she was just 11, full of cautious energy and carrying more unspoken memories than she let on. She never acted out, never rebelled, but she never fully let me in either. We had our routines, school drop-offs, homework checks, movie nights now and then, but there was always a quiet space between us, a kind of polite gap. Her dad passed away before I met them. I didn't try to take his place. I knew better than that. But maybe in trying not to overstep, I stepped too far back. Maybe she needed something more than space and quiet support. Maybe she needed to feel chosen, not just accepted. That night, I kept thinking back to the first time she handed me one of her drawings. It was a simple sketch, just a tree and a little house, but she'd waited silently for my reaction. I'd said, "Nice work," and handed it back. Seemed fine at the time. But now I wonder, what if she was testing the waters, trying to connect, trying to see if I saw her, really saw her? I also thought about how lately she had been lingering a little longer in the living room when I was around, asking small questions about my day, or offering to help with dinner when it wasn't her turn. Subtle things. Things I didn't really notice then. But now they felt like breadcrumbs. Like she was quietly trying to close the gap between us. So why now? Why ask me that question tonight? Did something happen? Was she feeling left out? Or was she finally ready to talk about things she hadn't before? And more than anything, how was I supposed to answer? The truth is, yes, I do think about her when she's not around. More than she knows. I notice the way she hums when she brushes her hair. I remember the little frown she makes when she's reading something intense. I think about her future, about her safety, about how she's growing into someone strong, kind, and full of depth. But I never told her that. Maybe because I didn't think it was my place. Or maybe I thought the bond would grow naturally without words. But now I was starting to realize that silence can sometimes be misread. And when someone gathers the courage to ask you a question that personal, it means the silence has been speaking too loudly for too long. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She got ready for school, grabbed her backpack, and mumbled a quiet goodbye. And I just stood there watching the door close behind her, knowing I couldn't let that question go unanswered. But I also knew if I was going to say something, it had to be real. It had to matter. Because sometimes one question can change everything. That whole day I couldn't focus. I went through my work calls, answered emails, even sat in a few meetings, but my mind kept drifting back to her. My stepdaughter's question kept echoing like it had carved out a space inside me I hadn't noticed before. I realized I didn't just owe her an answer. I owed her a real relationship. And not the kind that just shares a roof and routines, but one that makes space for hard conversations, for quiet truths. But how do you start that? Especially when you're not sure how much damage silence has already done. When she came home from school, everything felt normal again on the outside. She dropped her bag, headed to the fridge, asked what was for dinner. Casual, easy, but I could feel the tension sitting underneath every word. We were both pretending nothing had changed when in truth everything had. And the hardest part? Her mom didn't know any of it. That night, as we sat around the table, her mom was chatting about a friend's baby shower. My stepdaughter picked at her food, nodding politely, laughing in the right places. But every now and then she glanced at me. Not in a way that called attention, but like she was waiting. Or maybe just hoping. I didn't say much. I was still trying to figure out what the right thing to say even was. The worst thing I could do was make it awkward or force something that didn't feel real. Later, as her mom was getting ready for bed, she pulled me aside in the hallway. "Hey," she whispered. "Is everything okay between you two? She seemed kind of off today." I paused for a second, then nodded. "I think she's just got a lot on her mind," I said, which wasn't a lie. But it also wasn't the full truth. I didn't want to explain just yet, because I didn't even fully understand it myself. What I didn't expect was what happened the next day. Her teacher called, said she'd been distracted in class, didn't turn in her assignment, and seemed emotionally distant. My chest tightened. This wasn't like her. She was quiet, sure, but never checked out like that. That's when it hit me. Maybe the question she asked wasn't just about me. Maybe it was her way of asking if anyone really thought about her when she wasn't around. Maybe she was caring more than I realized. I started wondering if something had happened at school, or with a friend, or maybe with a memory she hadn't told us about. Her dad's anniversary was coming up. I had completely forgotten. She never brought it up. Never asked to visit his grave or talk about him. Maybe I assumed she was fine because she never said otherwise. But now I was starting to see how much she kept inside. There was a distance forming between her and everything around her. And maybe I was just noticing it now because she was finally starting to show it. The question she asked was only the surface. Something deeper was going on. And if I didn't figure it out soon, I feared I might lose whatever chance I had to reach her. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice in my head, soft, uncertain. Do you ever think about me when I'm not around? And it was like a thread I kept pulling, afraid of what I'd find at the other end. Something wasn't right, and now I could feel it in everything. The way she walked past me in the hallway without making eye contact. The way she lingered in the living room with her headphones on, present but completely distant. The silence was no longer just awkward, it was heavy. The next morning I got up early and knocked on her bedroom door. No answer. I hesitated, then cracked it open just enough to peek in. She was curled up under the blanket, fully dressed. Her school bag was on the floor untouched. That wasn't like her. She was always up before me, ready before I even had coffee. I didn't say anything right then. I just closed the door gently and went to the kitchen. When her mom came down, I told her I'd take the day off to drive our daughter to school. Make sure she was okay. She nodded, not questioning it, but I could tell even she was sensing the shift. Something about the air in the house felt fragile, like one wrong move might cause everything to crack. I waited until her mom left, then went back up and sat by her door. I didn't knock this time. I just said, "Hey, I was thinking maybe we could talk. Just you and me. You don't have to say anything you don't want to. I'm here." There was a long silence. I could hear her moving slightly, like she was deciding whether to come closer or stay hidden. Finally, the door opened just a little. She looked at me. Not upset, not angry, just tired. Like she hadn't slept either. "I don't want to go to school today," she said quietly. "Okay," I replied. "You don't have to. But will you come with me? Just for a drive?" She hesitated but nodded. We drove for a while in silence. I didn't even know where we were going. I just kept the wheels moving. Every few minutes I glanced over, but she was staring out the window, lost in thought. I wanted to reach her, to say something that would crack open whatever it was she was holding on to. But the words were stuck. And maybe that was the problem all along. Finally she spoke. "Do you remember my dad's laugh?" Her voice broke slightly, and she kept her eyes on the glass. I didn't know what to say. I never met him. I'd only seen photos, heard stories. But I realized then this wasn't just about me. It was about all the pieces of her life she'd been carrying alone. About the people she missed, the questions she never asked, and the spaces where love felt uncertain. She turned to look at me. Her eyes suddenly filled with something raw and real. "You don't have to be him. But if I disappear, would you notice?" The car slowed. My breath caught. This wasn't just a question anymore. It was a cry for something deeper. And in that moment, everything hung in the balance. The weight of her words hit me like a wave. "If I disappear, would you notice?" I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, trying to stay calm, trying not to let the panic show in my voice. There was something deeper in her tone, something that made my heart race. This wasn't a question about attention anymore. It was a quiet scream for meaning, for reassurance, maybe even for help. I pulled over to the side of the road, the engine humming low. "Of course I'd notice," I said, turning to face her. "You matter more than you know. I think about you all the time. I just never knew how to say it." She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, her fingers tangled in the sleeves of her sweatshirt. Then in almost a whisper she said, "You know that box in the attic? The one with all of my dad's stuff?" I nodded. Her mother had packed it away years ago. We never touched it. It felt like sacred ground, too fragile to disturb. "I've been going through it," she said. "At night, while you both sleep." My stomach turned, not because she went through it, but because she had done it in secret, quietly, alone. "There were letters," she continued. "Ones he wrote before he died. I never knew they were there. But he wrote about me, about my mom, about wanting me to remember him, even when things changed." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of yellowed paper, pressing it gently into my hand. "Read it," she said. I opened it slowly. His handwriting was uneven but warm. He'd written about loving her endlessly, about watching over her even when he couldn't be there in person. He wrote about hoping someone would come along someday who would treat her and her mother with kindness. He ended the letter with, "If someone is reading this now, I hope he's the kind of man who doesn't just see her, but truly sees through her silences." I read the words once, then again. I felt a lump rise in my throat. She had found this on her own, sat with it, thought about it, and then finally brought it to me. It was more than a letter. It was a challenge, a mirror. "I found another one," she added, her voice trembling slightly. "But this one was different. It wasn't from him." I turned sharply. "What do you mean?" She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a smaller envelope. "It's addressed to Mom, but it's not in his writing. And it's recent, like this year." I took the envelope, heart pounding. My name was written on the back corner. Not in my handwriting either. "I found it tucked under the lining of the box," she said, eyes locked on mine. "Why would someone hide something like that? And why does it have your name on it?" In that moment, everything shifted again. The box that was supposed to be a memory had become a doorway. And behind it, something we never expected was waiting. I sat there in the car, staring at the envelope. My name in someone else's handwriting, tucked inside a box that belonged to a man I never met. The same box my stepdaughter had been quietly exploring while the rest of us slept, looking for pieces of her past that maybe even her mother had tried to lock away. I turned the envelope over slowly, my fingers shaking just a bit. She watched me with a strange mix of curiosity and fear, like she wasn't sure if opening it would answer something or break everything. I slid the letter out. The paper was newer than the others, crisp, clean. The handwriting neat but unfamiliar. The words hit like a punch. Asterisk, if you're reading this, then I never found the right time to say it out loud. But I've known for a while. I know the truth about how he died. And I know the truth about you. Asterisk, my pulse spiked. My eyes scanned faster. Asterisk, you were never supposed to see this. None of you. But the guilt's too loud. I can't keep pretending. If she ever asks questions, don't lie to her. She deserves to know. They both do. Asterisk, it wasn't signed. I read it twice, then looked at her. This wasn't from your dad. It's from someone else. Someone who knew more than we thought. She nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "I think it was from my uncle. My dad's brother. He used to visit when I was younger, remember? Then he just stopped. And suddenly I did remember. A man who came around early in my marriage, friendly enough, but always watching me too closely. A man who once argued with her mom in the driveway, loud enough that I had to step in. A man whose name hadn't come up in years. Do you think he meant the accident?" she asked, her eyes wide, voice trembling. "Do you think it wasn't really an accident?" The silence between us said enough. We drove home in near silence. Her mother was in the kitchen when we walked in, humming softly, unaware of what we now carried. I pulled her aside, away from our daughter, and showed her the letter. Her face drained of color. Her hands trembled as she held it. "I never wanted her to know," she said quietly. "I was trying to protect her. But yes, her uncle was there that night. He was driving, They fought. It was storming. Her dad got out of the car, slipped near the road. It happened fast. And he never told anyone the truth. My stepdaughter stood at the doorway, hearing it all. I turned toward her, heart pounding, ready to help her hold the weight of it. But she didn't cry. She didn't run. She just said, I knew something didn't feel right. I just needed someone to say it. And just as I thought the worst was behind us, she reached into her backpack one last time and pulled out another letter. This one has your name on it too, she said, eyes locked on mine. But it's from him. My dad. He wrote it before he died. I took it stunned. A letter from the man I never met, sent to me somehow. The past wasn't done with us yet. I held the final letter in my hands, unsure if I was ready to read it. My stepdaughter stood in front of me, quiet but steady, like she needed to hear what it said as much as I did. Her mother sat at the table, wiping her eyes, still shaken from what had just come to light. The truth had changed so much in just a few hours. And yet, it felt like we were finally stepping into something honest. Something real. I unfolded the letter slowly. The handwriting was different this time. More rushed, like it had been written in a hurry. But the words were clear. Asterisk, if this reaches you, then I'm gone. And you've stepped into my family's life. I don't know who you are, but I hope you're the kind of man who understands what it means to love someone else's child. It won't be easy. She'll test you, maybe even shut you out. But don't mistake her silence for distance. She just wants to feel safe, loved, seen. Asterisk, I paused for a second, swallowing hard, then kept reading. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means you chose them. And I need you to know, I'm grateful. Not everyone steps into a space they didn't create and decides to stay. So if she ever asks if you think about her when she's not around, say yes. Say it out loud. Again and again. Because she needs to hear it. And she deserves to believe it. Asterisk, that was it.
No signature. No goodbye.
Just a message passed forward through time. I looked up, eyes meeting hers. She looked back, waiting. And in that moment I saw her. Not just the girl who had been carrying questions, but someone brave enough to seek her own answers. I do think about you, I said gently. When you're not around. When the house is quiet. When I'm worried. When I'm proud. You're part of me now. Whether I ever said it right or not. Her eyes filled, but she smiled through it. She walked over and wrapped her arms around me. And for the first time I didn't feel like a step anything. I just felt like family. In the days that followed we talked more about her dad, the letters, even the things that still didn't make complete sense. Her mom reached out to her uncle, not out of anger, but to bring a long-buried truth to light. The silence that had hovered for so long began to lift. The weight of things left unsaid began to fade. My stepdaughter started opening up more. Laughing louder, sharing more pieces of herself. And I learned that being there doesn't just mean showing up. It means speaking love out loud, even when you're unsure how it'll land. This all started with one quiet question. Asterisk, do you ever think about me when I'm not around? Asterisk, but it became something so much bigger. It became a story about connection, truth, and the strength it takes to ask for love. And I'll never forget the night she asked it. Because it's the night we both finally began to understand what family really means.